What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Chris of the almighty Underoath. Great to be able to talk with you today, man.
Almighty Underoath. All right, there we go. We're moving up in the world. Yeah,
Yep, I,
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, anytime. It's so awesome to have you here. Thank you for giving us some new music to wait out these rather uncertain times with. We got Voyeurist coming out very very soon. Being that you released five singles already off of this album, Damn Excuses, Hallelujah, Cycle, Numb, and Pneumonia. Is this already a good representation of what the entirety of Voyeurist is going to sound like, or is there still a lot more to be heard and a lot more to be discovered?
So I will say initially, just to piggyback off the, us releasing five songs off the album before it's even out, that was not initially part of the plan. We were supposed to have an October 2021 release, but then vinyl delay and everything, that just made that to where it wasn't going to be possible. So, but we'd already had our rollout plan going. So we had already released, I think, one or two songs. So we didn't want to like release two songs, then have to wait 5 months before anything else. So we decided, to keep releasing singles. And, we were pretty mindful of wanting to release songs that when you listen to them as a whole, you get a basic gist of where the album will swing from and to. There are songs that haven't been released yet that are, say for instance, more jammy than Pneumonia, which, we intentionally released that song because we wanted, to give people that side of the record. And not because one thing that I don't like is when a band will release like, two or three like singles, but then when you listen to the album as a whole, you're like, oh man, like there's like these three or four songs that are like, way different and way cool, like jammier, longer, experimental, whatever. And, you didn't even get a taste of that prior to the album being out. So, so the long short is there's definitely more that goes, on the heavier end, melodic end, and also the jammier end. But I feel like these five songs give at least people a solid foundation for what the album is, for sure.
Mhm. Did you consider Voyeurist just to be a direct continuation or picking up where you left off after Erase Me, or was this meant to be almost kind of like a new start for Underoath, being that Erase Me was sort of like the comeback album, and like this is almost kind of like the sequel to that in a way?
Yeah, I don't think, it's been so long since we did Erase Me, we definitely weren't thinking like, okay, let's pick up where that left off. But to be fair, I don't think we really ever do that with any of our records. I think that we're always coming into every record with a new like, okay, what do we want to do now? It's been however 2, 3, 4 years since the last one. Like, what are we feeling now? Like, what music are we wanting to write now? And kind of going from there. And that was the same with Erase Me as well. When we were doing that record, we knew that it wasn't going to be what everyone wanted, but we've known that with every record we've done, because we tend to go against what if I were running this band like a business and I just wanted to sell the most amount of records possible and make the most amount of money possible. We basically do whatever the opposite of that tends to be. So like, we broke up, and then, when we came back, we knew that, if we just did another record that was like, Define the Great Line, or They're Only Chasing Safety, or Lost in the Sound of Separation, that's what people would want to hear. But that just wasn't who we were at the time, and that's not what we wanted to do. And, when we came into doing Voyeurist, it was very much like, okay, we did Erase Me, but what are we feeling now? And when we started diving into what was connecting with us at that time, it was, in my mind anyway, a lot different. There was it was a lot heavier, a lot more experimental, lot grittier, I think. So, I don't think that people would listen to Erase Me and then listen to Voyeurist and think like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's where they went. Yeah, to me, it isn't necessarily a logical step, but it's the one that we took and the one that we're stoked on. So yeah.
Underoath is like a fantasy world where like nothing makes sense, and that's what makes it so beautiful. Because like I could tell as a Underoath fan, like when you compare Act of Depression to now, like you could almost tell, okay, that's off of Act of Depression, that's off of Cries of the Past, that's off of The Changing of Times, etc., etc. So like, and you just mentioned it, like I consider Underoath's music to be fairly experimental. So trying new things is always just like a no brainer for every album, right?
Yeah, and that's, I think that that's just kind of built into us. Like we don't try to do that. Like, you're talking about changing at times. Like I remember when we were doing that record, and when we were touring off that record, we were touring with a bunch of heavy bands. Like, we were going out with like Throwdown and 18 Visions and Terror, and like just doing all these really heavy tours, and we were just like, man, but we're getting in the van and listening to Jimmy Eat World, all day. So we were like, man, like let's do something like, these people that we're playing in front of, they're not going to like it, but like we just really want to do something more melodic, and that's where They're Only Chasing Safety came from. And then, we were doing we toured off They're Only Chasing Safety, and we were just like getting just, I think because that was a lot more of a melodic record, and we were getting paired with a lot more melodic bands, and that was just the world that we're in. We just naturally were like, let's do something heavier, like let's do something darker. And that's where Defying the Great Line came from. So we kind of tend to do these like swaps where we're just like, whatever we're in, we're like, hey, let's do something different. So I think for us though, that's just kind of what keeps it interesting, because no matter what people think of the music, we are the ones who are on stage playing the songs every night. So we want to write stuff that we're like super stoked on, the
Yeah.
stuff that we're going to get out there and be like, yeah, this freaking rules.
Yeah, I mean, Reinventing Your Exit is like a song that like is always near and dear to people, and always I've also noticed that like with an Underoath song, like there's so many different vibes as well. Like Reinventing Your Exit like is almost just like there's such a positive vibe behind it, but like I know a lot of people who could get a melancholy vibe behind it as well. So like in addition to bringing in many different sounds, you bring in many different vibes, and you just said it, you look at what you're feeling at that time. Is every song a representation of that emotion?
Yes. Yeah. Every song is, you're hearing what it is that when we were writing it, whatever the thing is that we were all laughing because we thought it was so awesome. That's the thing that ends up being on the record, and vocally, lyrically, the themes that are on each record and on each song, like that is specifically, what Aaron and Spencer are feeling and going through at that time, like, so in that way, every record we do is like a snapshot of that period of time for them in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it works well.
Well, but sometimes you're working on an album or a song for days, weeks. If you're Tool, 13 years. So like, I mean, do you find it harder, like maybe the longer you're working on a song, it is to maybe maintain that emotion or maintain what initially sparked the idea?
I don't think we've ever taken that amount of time in between a song being an idea and it being on an album. For us, there are songs that are like old, like, 15, 17-year-old songs where we don't we don't connect with them in the same way that we did when we wrote them. There, to be honest, there was a point in time where some older songs we were just like, we just don't want to play these because like that's not who we are anymore. But since then we've kind of come full circle to being like, hey, this is just a different thing now. This is an experience that we can now have with the crowd when we play this song, where this isn't us at this moment, but like, look at what's happening here. That's back and forth between us and the crowd. This is awesome. So, so to answer your question, I would say that I don't think that's ever happened. Like normally it's like years and years removed from a song being created or started that we would maybe start to be like, all right, this isn't where I'm at now. But I think even in that, it's interesting because you can kind of look at the song from a new perspective. Like I know there are songs that we did in the past where the lyrics were dealing a lot with Spencer's drug issues that he was having at the time, and obviously he's not in that place anymore. But it's interesting to look back and, if we play those songs, like, you can kind of put yourself in that spot, and there's still like an emotion there, but it's more of a memory than it is like a current feeling.
Definitely.
So yeah, it's odd but interesting.
I feel like songs also develop a lot of context as time goes on. I mean, I'll just say this right now: the album artwork for "They're Only Chasing Safety" I think makes a lot more sense now than like I've been telling like fuck the CDC and all these experts. Underoath is the prophet. They're predicting all the shit. So
We knew it was coming. We were trying to tell you guys.
yeah, but
Yeah.
but to be like, it almost seems like that. I think songs, sure, they're representative of a feeling that you were having. Changing of the Times is representative of how you were feeling in 2002, and They're Only Chasing Safety is 2004, etc. But like, it almost seems like that songs could also develop new life and have more context as the years go along, right?
Yeah, and I think I hinted at that before, but like the songs for us, they definitely do that. They take on new or different meaning as years go on. But what's really interesting for me is hearing uh, the meaning, even like when the songs are new, that other people take to the songs. That they'll, and I think that's one of just the beautiful things about music is you can show the same song with the same lyrics to five different people, and they'll get five different meanings out of it, because of whatever it is that they happen to be going through, and they attach themselves to a specific part of it. And I think that's awesome. Like, that's one of my favorite things, where somebody will come up and they'll explain what a certain song means to them and how deeply it impacted them. Where in my head, I'm like, that's not what that song was to us, but that doesn't matter. What matters is what you're getting out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's cool.
Yeah, and as you get older too, I mean, when Reinventing Your Exit was my first Under Oath song, and I first heard it when I was in fourth grade. I was 10 years old, and now I'm
Oh hell yeah!
and now I'm 28. It's so like, but like, and it had a different meaning when I first heard it in fourth grade. It had a different meaning when I first heard it in middle school, then in high school, and now as and as I'm pushing 30. So like, it almost seems like songs are life in itself that grow and develop with you as the artist and with the listener.
100%. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. And I can see that as well. With some of my favorite bands. Like, there's songs that I've been listening to for 20 years that I might turn back on, and I'm like, oh, like this hits me different now that I'm a dad, or now that I'm getting older. It feels in a different way. So yeah, but that's just the beauty of it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I do need to ask you this, and I should warn you that probably every media outlet is also going to ask you guys this. I'll speak on behalf of all of them. But
All right, I'm ready for it.
this year is the 20-year anniversary of the Changing of the Times. It's the 20-year anniversary. It came out in 2002. You can answer yes or no, or plead the fifth if you so choose. Can we maybe be expecting a celebration of that somehow?
I can say that it hasn't been talked about. That's really all I can say at this point. I actually only realized that it was the 20-year like a couple weeks ago when somebody hit me up on Twitter and said something about it. I was like, oh, okay. Um, I've learned through my years to never say never about anything. I do know that, yeah, there hasn't been any talk of it at this point, but we've got a whole year ahead of us. So yeah, so who knows?
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And if you could just take me back a little bit to that time period, like, what was the sort of mindset with that at the time? Because it almost seemed like people really associate that album with a lot of like the transition of like the post-hardcore movement, and I really think that the Changing of the Times, it's the perfect title because I think it was representative of not only the direction Underoath was going into, but what a lot of bands were going into at that time.
Yeah, that record was a big deal for us in that, every record that we had, because that record came out right as most of us were getting out of high school. We had the two EPs that we put out when we were in high school, but we were in a spot where um, our guitar player at the time, Corey, he wrote everything off from the time that we were started playing in the band. I started playing in the band when I was 16. He just wrote the music. Like that was just what it was. Like every now and then, some other stuff would be thrown in, some other ideas, but in general, he would present the songs and say like, hey, like, what do you think of this? So the changing in times for us was big because that was when Tim came into the mix, and really we were like, okay, we got to, because Corey left, and we were like, we got to see if we can even write songs. Like, how does this work? Like, what do we want our band to sound like? And the thing is like most of us weren't listening to a ton of heavy music at all. Like, we loved uh, like I said, Jimmy Eat World, At the Drive-In, stuff like that. And we were just trying to think like, well, what do we want to sound like? And it was still really heavy, because I think to make a transition from like Cries of the Past, which is like the EP that came out before that, to the Changing in Times being like a melodic thing would have been crazy. But there were hints of melody that we hadn't messed around with before, and like our whole thing was just like, let's experiment with uh having a heavy band that has melody in it, because we all just, we like pop music, we like melodic rock, whatever, and like let's see what that is. And the whole making of that album was a whole process in and of itself, because we were in the studio on that, recording that on 9/11, which was a whole crazy thing. And and at that time we were still like, we didn't really have any responsibilities. There was no like, okay, this band is like what we do. It was like, yeah, we like playing in this band and this is like a fun thing to do, but it wasn't like uh our career, I guess, because we weren't really making money at it. um so yeah, it's interesting to go back and listen to those songs because again, it is just a snapshot of where we were at the time, like trying to find out who we were. And but even the writing, the recording, and the touring of that, there was a whole transition period that was going on in there, because we got Grant joined the band right after that. James joined the band right after that, and then Spencer joined the band right after that. So it was really like right after that record was done and we were touring on it, that was really where we, I think, found who we are as a band. So
Yeah, and to call it the changing of times, like there's almost kind of like an unsettling aura because it almost seemed like everything at that time was changing. Like you mentioned 9/11. I mean, the whole world changed after that. I think music was changing after that. You guys were clearly changing after that. And is that why you called it the changing of times?
uh I think that more so it was probably called Changing at Times because of the changes that we were going through. I don't think that people really understood at the time. I think hindsight's 2020, and when you go back, you're like, oh, like 9/11 changed the entire planet, and there's all this other stuff to change. But I think that that's more so stuff you're able to put your finger on looking back on it. But yeah, it was more so, I think, geared toward like the changes that were going on with us personally, band wise, etc. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And last thing I wanted to mention that is I think the one reason why people are memorable about it, and this isn't to throw shade at other post-hardcore bands. As a New York City guy, I think throwing shade at hardcore in general is a death sentence. But like, when you like look at like At the Drive-In's Relationship of Command or Glassjaw's Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Silence, they're all great albums, but I feel like they only kind of stuck within the generation that was listening to that at the time. I know people who are still picking up that album who are 10 years old now. I just played it for my 10-year-old niece and she was getting onto it. So like I think that is what makes it gravitate towards so many people.
Yeah, no, and I think that I mean, in general, just the idea of inspiration when you're writing music is it's a very uh it's a very odd thing, and sometimes I don't even think you can put your finger on it, because there's times when we are, you know, not even overtly, but we're very inspired by a specific album or a specific band because we happen to be listening to it a lot at the time, but we don't even realize that it's like creeping its way into what what we're doing. And and to be able to look back on some of these bands that were just, I can point to them and say, like, if it were not for this band, we would not either be a band at all, or we would not be who we are. You know, I look back at like Grade, and I know that we would not be who we are if we had not heard Grade, if we had not heard Glassjaw, if we at the drive-in, Jimmy Eat World, you know, so many of these bands that, you know, really like just shone a light on what was possible with music, you know. And I think that also I would put Thursday into that category, because you know we all love Thursday, but then like seeing that they were actually like successful as well. I remember when we were, I think it was right around the time we were working on the Early Chasing Safety, I think, like writing it. You know, Understanding in a Car Crash was on like MTV and stuff, and I remember us just being like, oh, like that's like a real band that is like also successful. Like that's crazy. Like we didn't know that was possible, because for us it was always like there's what we do, and then there's like what's popular and people listen to, and there was never those two never met. It was like we'll play shows in front of 50 people, 100 people, and go on tour because that's what we do. And then these other popular bands will play these like huge shows. And then like when we saw Thursday, we were like, oh wow, like that's crazy. So, you know, and you know, being able to tour with them a ton over the years has been, you know, it's been awesome. I love those guys. So
I wanted to go a little bit back to your songwriting actually as well. Just because you know, I've always been, you know, as a fellow keyboard player myself, which is why I was excited to get you today.
oh nice.
Yeah, but like there's so many different sounds that are incorporated in Under Oath as well. In order to like come up with ideas and how you're gonna lay down your parts, do you prefer to be in the company of your other bandmates, or you know, isolation being the fuel for creativity, what it is? Do you prefer to maybe, you know, write alone when you're kind of like where there's nothing in between you and your instrument?
I think depending on the song, a little of both. You know, there are some times where I'll come to the table with like a, you know, a start, like a fully electronic start, and I'm like, hey, like, what if we built something off of this, you know? And then that's where, you know, me and Tim will work on something, or me and Aaron, or me and Spencer, or you know, we'll all kind of, you know, work together, and hash out something from there. But there are other times when we're just in a room and something naturally happens. You know, I will say that in particular, Tim, Aaron, and Spencer, they all write so much faster than I do. Like they're so fast. And like when I'm in a room with them, I feel like I'm having to keep up. So um there is merit to me being able to have time on the side by myself. You know, and on Voyeurist, you know, I did probably half of that stuff from here, and then I did the other half in the studio with them, and that was kind of how I split my time up, because the studio that we recorded in is only probably like 40 minutes from where I'm at now. um, so it would be nice to be able to be in the studio with them for the day. We come up with all these ideas, and then I would come back here and like figure out, okay, how is this going to work, you know? Because with electronics in particular, there's a lot more to it than like if you are writing a guitar part. Because if you're writing a guitar part, you've got your guitar, it's in your hand, and you're like, okay, where are my fingers going to go, what notes am I going to play? But with electronics, it's like, okay, like we want to have some sort of electronic rhythm thing here. Then for me, that goes to, all right, well, I need to figure out what these drums are going to sound like. Like, are they going to be like, you know, like 90 sounding drums? Are they going to be electronic? Are they going to be like acoustic drums run through distortions? Are they going to be whatever? And like, that's a whole thing that I spend a lot of time doing, which nobody wants to sit in a room when songs are being created and hear me go through like 150 drum samples and filters and all this stuff just to find the right sound. That's nothing anybody needs to waste their time with. So that stuff I tend to do on my own, and then I come to them and I'll bring ideas, and then we'll riff out from there. So yeah.
Do you prefer to like have like arrangements and other songs written before you start laying down your electronic parts, or do you sometimes maybe have like a whole pattern that maybe could help, you know, almost be the foundation of a new song?
Again, I mean, it sounds like a cop out, but both. You know, there are some songs where, again, you know, I'll come to the table with a semi-realized idea, and we build off of that, and it's like, oh, great, like, you know, and then those guys run with it, and then we figure out the rest from there. And then there are some times when I'll get like almost a fully realized song from, Aaron or Spencer or Tim, and then we'll be like, okay, like how does this work with electronics? Like where do, because whenever we're sending ideas back and forth, it's always like the roughest of demos. Like we never send a polished anything. It's always like missing guitar parts here. Oh, there's no bass on this part, and there's no vocals or whatever. So there's always room for like, I think in particular, me and Tim always go back and forth on like, is this a guitar thing or is this an electronics thing? Because I think that that's where a lot of cool dynamics come in, where um, you know there might be a thing where there's like a really cool electronic part, but then like I'll be like, dude, this should be a guitar part, this would sound much cooler on guitar, and vice versa, where like there's some cool guitar part, but it's like, oh, if that was electronic and it was like gross and bendy, like that would sound cool. So it's a lot of those discussions back and forth. Just But again, it's on a song by song basis. Like we don't ever really come into an album saying, here's how we're going to do these songs. It's like, because we tend to start with like 20 or 30 like of those really rough ideas, and then sometimes we'll interchange parts. We're like, we can't figure out where to go once we get to this part of this song, but it's like, oh, but that other demo, we had that like that cool riff, what if we put that here, like that sort of stuff. So you would think that doing it this long we would have a little bit more of like a system, but it's literally just like whatever we think sounds cool.
I
So
think the spontaneity of Underoath is what makes the band so charming. Like I only saw Underoath for the first time very recently. It was in 2018 on the tour you did with Dance Gavin Dance
oh, okay, awesome.
at PlayStation Theater, and I actually was originally not even going to go to that show, but somebody hooked me up with the ticket at like
Oh,
last
that's awesome.
minute, and I ran from my apartment into Times Square. I tripped over a couple hot dog carts on the way there.
I hope you liked it. That was a good time
No,
for that show.
that was amazing, and it made it worth the wait. Um, and I think like the spontaneity of Underoath is what makes it so good. Like I obviously can't speak for the band, but I don't recall anybody expecting Disambiguation to be the last Underoath album for almost a decade. I don't and I don't think people again were expecting how influential the changing of times or They're Only Chasing Safety will be. And even with this new album, I've gotten the album, but I'm excited for other people to hear it. I'm excited. I think people are going to be very shocked in a good way of what Underoath was able to say. I don't consider any Underoath album to be a continuation of this or a continuation of that. The only continuation element I see is a continuation of evolution.
Yeah, well, I a couple different notes. A, thanks for the kind words. B, I'm super stoked that people are actually getting to hear it. Like I said, because it's been done for almost a year now. So I'm stoked that people are hearing it in full. And yeah, like I I I think also, the what you just said about the evolution, that's what we're always going for. I think that we always want to just be on the edge of like what it is that we're feeling and what it is that we are excited about, because that is where I think our best stuff comes from. But with that, we kind of have to not really care what people are going to think about it. So like, there's always this weird period in between when we get done recording a record and when it comes out, where we're listening to it, we're like, man, like this is awesome. But then it's always just kind of like, I wonder if people are going to like this. Like, but that doesn't come into the discussion when we're actually making it, but it's more so just if we like it this much and then people also like it, and then that's like a double whammy. But either way, we'll be out on the road playing this stuff. And I just had like an hour long talk with Tim today. We're trying to put together our set list, and
Uh,
it's hard to figure out now. We just have so many albums we want to pull from, and then with all the new stuff,
just play
it's
the whole
hard.
catalog. What could happen?
Oh yeah, we did a tour once where we played two albums back to back. So it's basically like two shows a night, and it was brutal. Like it was physically, it was a lot, and yeah, we vowed to never do that again.
Fair enough. Do you have time for two more questions, or is there a
Yeah,
time?
yeah, I got nothing after this. We're good.
Oh, okay, cool. Because I do got a couple more questions for you. When it comes to the Under Oath live presence, though, because you mentioned, as we stated before countless times, that every song is reflective of an emotion, but there's a difference between songwriting and then playing it live. When you play it live, are you all kind of going back into that feeling? Is it almost kind of like replicating that same emotion, or when you're playing it in front of an audience, it almost kind of like has a whole new energy and a whole new lease of life?
The latter for sure. I think that there are some songs that live just turn into completely different beasts emotionally than they are on the record. Like I know there's a song off of Erase Me called No Frame that we love the song, but it wasn't until we started playing it live that we were like, wow, this is like a special thing live. And again, like you said, while we were talking about earlier, there are some older songs that, they're just a completely different experience playing them now than they were 10, 15 years ago. So, yeah. And, there are some songs even like from tour to tour that will change where, we played a song on our last tour and it was like awesome. And then we're not really feeling it on this tour. So we'll swap it out. And, and for us, a lot of our live choices are, songs that we just want to play that we think would be fun to play. There are songs that we play because it's like every band has songs that they just kind of need to play. But we try to have as many of the oh dude these would be sick to play songs as possible. And that we're right in the middle of those talks right now.
Mhm. And in terms, kind of going back to your keyboard playing and your electronics, I know this is kind of a cliche question, like what are your influences? But like when I hear some of the electronic or the keyboards in Underoath, I mean, I've associated it from everything from like epic, like piano music to like Aphex Twin. Like, I mean, like, do you have kind of like an inspiration of what kind of got you more into the electronic aspect of music? Were you like listening to industrial? Were you listening to more like classical? What was sort of like your inspiration that led you into playing in Underoath?
Yeah, so I would say back then, initially I was listening to a lot of like European black metal, like Antestor and Nightwish and Extol, like we were talking about earlier. So a lot of my early influences when I first joined the band were that, because we were a lot more like black metal then, and that we just wanted to have like a symphonic element. So that's kind of where I came in with it. Um, but then, once we got out of that and we started actually like all writing, once changing in times hit, I was really like trying to figure out where I stood. And, I think that, yeah, I think Fear Factory was a
One of my
big one for me
favorite
initially.
bands of all time.
Yeah, they're amazing. And like when I heard Demanufacture for the first time, that was the first album where I was like, oh, like there can be this electronic element in this heavy music. Like that was a huge record for me.
Did you hear the new
Nine
Fear
Inch
Factory?
Nails. What's that?
Did you hear the new Fear Factory?
The one with Disruptor on it,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, I love that record. I
that's
think
the
it's
best album
awesome.
since Demanufacture, I thought.
Yeah, and it's the best that their singer has sounded, I think, maybe ever. Like sounds like a madman. Burton. To Bummer, that's his, well, maybe his last record. I don't know. He kind of
Yeah.
comes and goes, but yeah, he sounds like a machine. It's crazy. Um, but yeah, they were a big one. Nine Inch Nails. Uh, uh, you know, like Tom York, Radiohead type stuff. As stuff went on, that was a big influence. But yeah, when I got started, it was a lot more of like the heavy stuff. Typo Negative. Orange 9mm was doing some
I haven't heard that
electronic
name in a
stuff
minute.
back then. But yeah, a lot of that stuff.
It seems like keyboards could just go with anything. It's keyboards are like the salt of music. You could just put it on anything.
Well, and it helps because you can make them sound like anything too. So
Yeah, exactly, exactly. You got it, but maybe consider this in the future though, because again, you guys have innovated so much. Try to maybe even as a goof, maybe just an EP, do like an Under Oath symphony.
Yeah, it's an idea for sure, and one that I think could probably work. It was just it would be a lot of it'd be a lot of work for sure. I know that there's this string quartet that did an album of ours, just as a quartet, which was really cool. But yeah, that'd be a lot of work for me, and I'd have to have to really commit to it.
Yeah, well, never say never. I went to a candlelight orchestra concert recently, and they did a '90s theme. They were covering Alanis Morissette and '90s
Oh,
Metallica,
that's cool.
and it was awesome. And
Yeah, not to go totally off track, but have you seen that Alanis Morissette documentary on HBO?
I haven't yet. I haven't yet. Don't tell me because I have it marked on my calendar, like or marked on my list of things to see.
So gosh, it's so good.
Oh my God, Jagged Little Pill. I mean, I was born to that. That was my soundtrack to. I was born in '93, so like
Oh man, that makes me feel freaking old. I love that.
I have a habit of doing that. When the Changing of Times came out, I was in second grade, so.
Yeah, yeah, no big deal. Cool. Yeah.
I was still in the process of learning how to fully read. um,
But see, the thing is though, is like there's so many times where that happens where I'm like, man, that just makes me feel old. But I'm like, yeah, but I just got started so early. Like I started playing in this band when I was 16. So it's I'm not even I'm 38. So I'm not like ancient, but like when you put it in terms like that, where it's like, oh yeah, when you were in the studio recording during 9/11, I was second grade. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Like, yeah.
I'm known for doing that actually. Like a couple PRs who I've reached out like would warn the artist like, by the way, this dude is gonna make you feel old. That's kind of his shtick.
Oh, I back it. That's great. It's seniority,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but like, and with the genre thing, a lot of people have labeled Underoath as metalcore, which I think I love a lot of that. Whatever the definition of metalcore is, I love all those bands. That was what was getting me in. But I kind of wanted your take on it. What is metalcore? Because when I ask people what metalcore is, they say, "Oh, it's music that has singing and screaming." I'm like, "Okay, so is Fear Factory a metalcore band? Is Opeth a metalcore band? Is Soilwork a metalcore band?" To you, like, do you think that that term metalcore is just like completely like overused and like still doesn't have meaning to it?
I don't know. I mean, I think that gets into the deeper discussion of if genre names mean anything in general. Um, like the other day, I was cleaning the house and I asked Siri to play uh, classical music, just to have classical music on in the house, and it was playing like stringed versions of like current hits, like a Rihanna song, but like with strings. And I'm like, this isn't classical music; it's just strings. So, as far as like what metalcore is, it's different uh, for everyone, I guess. But what I would say it is me personally is a band that does open muted chugs where the kick drum and the rhythm guitar do the same thing, like just like that sort of thing. But I don't know. I mean, it's I always, whenever anybody asks, like, people who don't know who we are, and they find out I'm in a band, they're like, "Oh, what kind of music is it?" I just tell them it's heavy rock or heavy metal, like, because I think that's like the most generic. Like, we're a heavy band, like, I feel like that's the easiest way to do it. So
Well, I mean, to like the radio friendly crowd, they would listen to your music and think you guys are like Burzum. But then to like the metal, to like the hardcore, metal Puritans, they would listen to your music and think that you guys are like Lady Gaga. So
yeah, so that's where it comes into it. The only thing that matters is who you're talking to. Like, genre names mean different things for everybody. So what I more tend to do, like, if somebody's telling me about a band, I don't ask them what genre they are. I just say, well, what does it sound like? And they'll compare it to like two or three bands or whatever. And I find that to be a lot better of a uh way of describing music than using the words, the genre words.
fair enough. On the periodic table of subgenres.
Yeah.
Yep. And the final question I wanted to ask you is, and I'm not asking this to blow smoke by any means, but I've interviewed so many bands and talked to numerous musicians who have cited Under Oath to be an inspiration. I mean, sorry to make you feel old again, but you are the band that now, like, a lot of people are like they're going to their 10-year high school reunion graduation and being like, I remember listening to, these albums. Like, you
Yeah,
were the band that got people through high school, but you see how bands such as Of Mice and Men or Escape the Fate or Black Veil Brides, took inspiration from you. I remember when My Chemical Romance was opening for you guys, like back in the day. I couldn't go, but like, I remember hearing about it.
you were one or something.
Yeah. But like, when you see on how an artist has taken inspiration from you, or even just a fan, like your music has, been an epiphany for them to the point where it changed their course of life. Does it make you look at yourself as an artist differently, or does it almost make you like? Does it even inspire you to even do new things as well?
I'll say no to both of those. It doesn't make me look at us any differently. It doesn't make me want to go and do more, because for us, like, we've always had this view of ourselves as like, we're not special. We're not the best at our instruments. We're not the best at writing songs. Like, and I think a lot of that comes from touring with so many ridiculously talented bands, specifically when we were coming up, that just never really went anywhere. Like bands that were way better than us, bands that were better at their instruments than we are, bands that had better records than we did. But there was just something that happened with us where we clicked with a lot of people at once. So I always just look at it as like, yo, that's cool. Like, the fact that anything that we have done has impacted anyone in that way is crazy. And cool. I don't look at it as like, yeah, like we did something great, or like, yeah, like we're great artists. I just look at it as like, that's cool, man. Like that's awesome that this thing that we did just because that we love it has helped someone or inspired someone to write music or whatever. So yeah, I guess that's what I would say is it's cool, and but at the same time, like I have that same discussion with band, like members of bands that I love, where like I was just talking to you about Fear Factory, and I'm like, if it were not for Fear Factory, like I would not be a musician at all. And or Pantera or whoever. So it's like, you know when I meet these guys, I'm like, hey, I know you hear this all the time, but I just, just want to thank you, blah blah blah. And so it's cool when people talk to me about that, because I'm in that exact same spot, just with other bands. Um so when they'll if someone says something like, oh, like, no, like you guys were like a big deal, I don't know how to explain it, I just stop people. I'm like, no, I know, because for me it was Glassjaw, or for me it was Fear Factory or Pantera or whoever, and I've had these discussions, so like I know exactly what you're saying, and thank you, because that's really cool. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'm glad that you gave such an honest answer about that, because there's times where like and I'm not throwing shade at the artists who have said it, but like they'd be like, oh, it's very humbling. Oh, of course it inspired, because sometimes it is kind of like cliche or forced, or only saying it to be nice. Like I had a discussion with Craig from Escape the Fate about this, and he says, I'm honored that people feel that way, but we were just the background music to whatever somebody else had to overcome. Like, and I'm not taking away from the meaning of music, but it is music. I've never said was the solution for people's darkness. It was just like part of the formula in a way. I think.
Yeah, and music is insanely powerful, but I think that the biggest power that music has is for somebody to listen to a song and feel heard or seen, whether it's a lyric, whether it's a melody, an entire song, whatever it is, or they listen to it and they're like, the person who wrote this understands how I'm feeling. They don't know me. They don't know exactly what I'm going through, but they have gone through something that is similar, and I can connect with this. And, I don't think that you can really overstate how impactful that can be. And and we never go out trying to write anything for that reason. We're not like, oh, like we're going to go change some lives with this new record. We're just putting ourselves out there. We're just like being naked in front of people. And I think that by default, if you are that vulnerable, you can somebody will be able to connect with it. So I think it's an odd position to be in for sure, what we do, because our career is just like being emotionally vulnerable and like open to critique, and but at the same time just doing something that we love. So the fact that it can help someone along whatever path they're going down, like that's, yeah, it's awesome. And it's cool to, as we're gearing up for tour, like thinking about that live. That's always a really interesting thing, being able to look out and like look somebody in the eye and see that they're going through something at that moment with that song, like they're feeling something in that song. And that's just, yeah, that's magic. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, the art itself and the experience, whether it's listening to the album or seeing you live, is really where it all matters, because that's where we're feeding off of your energy, and you're feeding off of our energy. I think it's just a moment, and that's what Under Oath has always been, a moment in time that has evolved so much.
I couldn't have said it better. I agree.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. And this actually
Yeah,
went,
thank you.
this went a lot longer than I expected, and I'm so happy.
Oh no, it's all good. I'm full of coffee, and yeah, I've got no other interviews after this, so yeah, it's all good.
Oh, awesome! You want to go for another 3 hours? No, I'm kidding.
Oh yeah, I should probably actually get to work. I got music.
Yeah, but is there just anything else with Under Oath that you would like to promote with the release of Voyeurist? I know that you're hitting the road with Every Time I Die and Spirit Box. Am I missing another band on that bill?
Nope.
Okay. Is there just
When is this coming out?
what?
When is this coming out?
This will be out by like in a couple hours.
Oh, got it. Okay, then yeah, no, you're not missing anything.
Okay, but that being said, there is plenty of stuff coming. You just can't talk about it yet.
Yeah, we're working on stuff. As far as that tour goes, we're gearing up for that. Yeah, the biggest thing is just we're gonna have a big year. We're looking to be out on the road, COVID permitting, and it's yeah, it's gonna be a big one, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Under Oath. Be sure to check out Voyeurist, coming out January 14th. Start 2022 off on a great note. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.
All right.